The ISS Mirror, a desecration-class cruiser, had recently left dry dock after undergoing minor repairs. The Mirror was no ordinary vessel. It was one of the most recognized ships in the Terran Alliance Starfleet. A ship of such prestige was rarely sent to patrol the frontier sectors. In this case, it served more as a subtle, unofficial form of shore leave. Although not today. Not in the eyes of Captain Nathan Holloway. To him, this was his first important mission since commanding a Frontier-class patrol frigate. Yet, the lingering fear always haunted him. That the ship might collide with a tennis-court-sized asteroid or meteor and cost the lives of 90% of the crew. So far, all had been well. The week had passed peacefully. The border with the mid-edge of the galaxy was truly quiet, sparsely populated and devoid of empires worth worrying about. At worst, one might expect pirates raiding a colony or cargo freighter. In the meantime, Nathan had been reviewing the crew files. 400 naval officers and 100 army officers and soldiers acting as support. It was extensive reading, but useful, as most of the crew had served aboard the Mirror for quite some time, with only a few fresh faces. He also studied the ship's schematics. 14 decks, a lateral hangar, 6 ion nuclear sublight engines, and 3 FTL propulsion drives. Quite a lot, really, including the absurd fact that 3 entire decks were dedicated to engineering. Then again, one shouldn't judge a ship by how many decks are assigned to one department, especially not a Terran Alliance cruiser. These weren't Tentarian or Corellian cruisers, designed almost exclusively for orbital bombardment. Terrans preferred more versatile, multi-purpose vessels, capable of doing a bit of everything. Captain Holloway was reading the personnel file of the ship's operations and communications officer, Chief Samantha Sanders. Young but seasoned, she had served under 2 of the most famous captains in the Alliance, Z. Fane and Ethan Ravens. Both had once commanded the very same Mirror, and Sanders had never been reassigned in 5 years of continuous service. He then moved on to the helmsman's file, John O'Brien, who, like Sanders, had served his entire career aboard the Mirror. He continued reviewing the senior officers, Tactical Officer Xander Bennings, Chief Medical Officer Dr. Martha Reyes, and Chief Engineer Clark Charleston. All had first-hand experience with discipline and efficiency. All had served with living legends. The captain felt a slight twinge of envy. Serving under such names was something few could ever claim. The next morning, Captain Holloway had barely stepped out of his quarters when the first sign that things would get interesting arrived. "Captain Holloway, your presence is required on the bridge," Sanders called out over the internal comm system. Holloway immediately rushed to the bridge. When he arrived, he didn't need to request a report. It was already waiting for him. "There's a distress signal, sir. I've already analyzed the radio signature. It's from the ISS Trafalgar. It was declared lost 8 months ago in the neighboring sector, K1462778. No trace of the ship or its escape pods was ever found. Official cause, unknown stellar phenomenon. That's what the report says, but it's vague, sir. I recommend we investigate," Sanders concluded. "Alright, the cause may be vague, but it's our ship. We can't ignore it. Transfer the coordinates to O'Brien Station," Holloway told Sanders, then turned his gaze to Bennings. "Bennings, prep the ship's shields and have the weapons on standby, just in case. Better to be cautious. O'Brien, whenever you're ready." "Captain, I went ahead and notified Dr. Reyes to prepare for potential survivors," Sanders added. "Excellent, Sanders, but don't be grim. If there's a chance we can rescue someone, we must." Moments later, the Mirror was en route to the source of the signal, located 0.7 light-years away from their current position. It was a short trip for most, except for Holloway, who braced himself for what they might find. These kinds of sporadic distress signals often turned out to be traps, but forging a valid radio signature was near impossible unless you were a transplanetary communications engineer. And there weren't many pirates or Terran enemies with that kind of knowledge. Upon arriving, the command bridge fell silent. There was nothing outside. It was strange. Despite being within 1,000 kilometers of the source coordinates, nothing was visible. The origin point simply wasn't there, yet the distress signal kept broadcasting. Sanders, Run intensive scans of everything within a 5 million kilometer radius. Beddings, maximum power to shields and weapons. O'Brien, confirm our coordinates. I want the rest of the ship on yellow alert," said Holloway, already gripped by a sepulchral feeling that something was deeply, terribly wrong. "Aye, Captain," replied the others, all now sharing the same uneasy feeling. Tick-tack, tick-tack. It echoed in all their minds. Silence reigned, until it was too late. A delayed response from the long-range and proximity sensors. "Captain, unknown vessel approaching at FTR speeds. No confirmation on signature ID. All I can confirm is that its hull configuration matches that of a battleship. It's massive, on a collision course. 30 seconds, Sanders cried out, panicking, as she initiated the collision protocol without waiting for authorization. "O'Brien, full reverse. Maximum thrust now. Bennings, divert all available power to shields. This is Holloway to all crew. Red alert. Collision protocol. Brace for impact," Nathan shouted, descending into a panic himself. They all carried out their orders, but it was too late. A computer error. It wasn't 30 seconds. It was 10. The sound of tearing metal echoed throughout the ship. Consoles exploded on every deck. Shrapnel flew through the air. Alarms blared. Decks decompressed. Death stood at the threshold. A buzzing sound. That's all Nathan could hear. His eardrums were bleeding. He lay on the floor, barely conscious. He stood up with effort, limping toward O'Brien, who was slumped in his chair, head hanging down. Nathan touched him, tried to shake him awake. His hand came away covered in blood. O'Brien didn't respond. He wouldn't. He was dead. Nathan wiped his face, only to smear more blood across it, and feel the old scar beneath his right eye had reopened from the impact. Benning strapped himself to his station with a broken arm and struggled to breathe. Fractured ribs, punctured lung. Sanders had split her forehead. A thin line of blood trickled from it, down her left cheek, ending at her chin. She ignored a brutal burn running along the right side of her face and neck. Her once golden hair was scorched. The rest of the bridge crew stirred in pain, some with broken bones. Others didn't move at all. The ship's computer repeated the same message over and over. "Hull breaches on decks 12 through 14. Atmosphere loss on deck 9. Massive structural failure. Abandoned ship is advised." Again and again it echoed, until Holloway snapped back to awareness. "Sanders! Report! Sanders! Give me a damn report!" Sanders didn't respond. Her eyes were fixed in a 1,000-yard stare, locked on O'Brien's lifeless body. "Beddings, report!" he asked a third time, turning to someone else. "Communications. Internal and external. Offline. Life support. Offline. Sensors gone. Primary power gone. Secondary barely functioning. No reports from other decks. They must be..." Bennings collapsed, barely breathing. "Hull breaches on decks 12 through 14. Atmosphere loss on deck 9. Massive structural failure. Abandoned ship is advised," repeated the computer. "Computer, silence," Holloway muttered, picking up the remains of his chair from the floor and placing it among the wreckage before sitting down, falling into silence. He replayed the images in his mind again and again, of the last time he was in an accident, back when he was first officer on a frigate. It was all happening again. 4 decks below on deck 5, reserved for medical operations, the wounded poured in by the dozens. Dr. Reyes was performing rapid micro-operations on the most critical patients, moving from one to the next without hesitation. She wasn't even aware of her own injuries. "Dr. Reyes, please check your torso," cried a young nurse, Sophie. It was her first assignment, her very first mission. "Don't tell me what to do, Sophie!" Reyes shouted, without taking her eyes off the scalpel or the patient. "You've got a rod impaled through you, Doc," Sophie said calmly. Approaching Reyes as another medic gently pulled the badly injured doctor away and took over the procedure. 3 decks below, a veteran officer clutched the lifeless body of a young recruit. In the last few days, he'd grown especially fond of her. Now he could only sob her name, Kathy, over and over, through tears red with pain. As for the engineering decks, everyone had been blown out into space when the hull quite literally disappeared. There was no one left alive who could bring the mirror back to life. 15 minutes earlier. "Captain, we're approaching the coordinates of the Trafalgar's distress signal," said the helmsman of the flagship battleship, ISS Fortuna. "Excellent. Prepare rescue protocols. I want medical teams on standby to receive any survivors. I hope there are some," replied the captain. "There will be, Valerie. There will be," said the first officer casually, just before checking the sensors and noticing a strange anomaly. Captain, there's an object of irregular size. Doesn't look like an asteroid. More like the dimensions of a cruiser. Looks like a discretion class. I think it's the mirror." "Is that a problem, Mark? They probably picked up the signal too and went to investigate," she replied with a relaxed tone. "Well, yeah, there's a problem. They're in our FTL exit point." "Collision protocol! Emergency stop now! Get the crew ready for impact!" the captain ordered, suddenly terrified. It was too late. The emergency stop took several crucial seconds. Seconds that cost the lives of 298 officers and crew aboard the Mirror, while the Fortuna suffered only minor damage thanks to its super-reinforced armor. When everyone on the Fortuna's bridge looked up, they saw frozen bodies, drifting lifelessly through the void. Official report. Terran Alliance High Command. Report number 9172-51002-7. Number Delta Omega. Authority level Alpha 7. The ISS Trafalgar is hereby classified as a ghost ship. The ISS Mirror is declared total loss, scrap designation. The ISS Fortuna and its crew are suspended from active duty pending full investigation of the accident. It is also stated that surviving members of the Mirror, fearing hostile Xeno boarding, opened fire on Fortuna's emergency response teams. The surviving crew will be subjected to psychological evaluation. The heroic actions of junior medical crew member Sophie Dalton are recognized. She successfully stopped an outbreak of violence in the medical bay during the rescue operation. A Medal of Heroism is recommended, along with posthumous commendations for the 298 officers and crew lost in the collision. The Department of Catastrophic Incident Investigation also notes the possibility that the accident may have been orchestrated by forces external to the Terran Alliance. Signed, Admiral Neil Faulkner, Chief of Operations Division, High Command.